Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nashtaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from chapter 14 of the 10th Canto, Brahma's prayers to Lord Krishna. This chapter describes the prayers Brahma offered to Lord Krishna, who is also known as Nandanandana. For his satisfaction, Brahma first praised the beauty of the Lord's transcendental limbs, and then declared that his original identity of sweetness is even more difficult to comprehend than his opulence. Only by the devotional process of hearing and chanting transcendental sounds received from the Vedic authorities can one realize the personality of Godhead. It is fruitless to try to realize God through processes outside the scope of Vedic authority. The mystery of the personality of Godhead, who is the reservoir of unlimited spiritual qualities, is inconceivable. It is even more difficult to understand than the impersonal Supreme. Thus, only by the mercy of God can one understand His glories. Finally, realizing this, Brahma repeatedly condemned his own actions and recognized that Lord Sri Krishna, the ultimate shelter of the universe, is Brahma's own father, the original Narayan. In this way, Brahma begged the Lord's forgiveness. Brahma then glorified the inconceivable opulence of the personality of Godhead and described the way in which Brahma and Shiva differ from Lord Vishnu. The reason for the Supreme Lord's appearance in various species of demigods, animals, and so on, the eternal nature of the pastimes of the personality of Godhead, and the temporality of the material world. By knowing the Supreme Personality in truth, the individual spirit soul can achieve liberation from bondage. In actuality, however, both liberation and bondage are unreal, for it is only from the living entity's conditioned outlook that his bondage and liberation are produced. Thinking the personal form of Lord Krishna illusory, fools reject his lotus feet and look elsewhere to find the Supreme Self. But the futility of their search is the obvious proof of their foolishness. There is simply no way to understand the truth of the personality of Godhead without His mercy. Having established this conclusion, Lord Brahma analyzed the great good fortune of the residents of Braj, and then personally prayed to be born there even as a blade of grass, or a bush, or a creeper. Indeed, the homes of the residents of Vrindavan are not prisons of material existence, but rather abodes of envy, even by the Gyanis and Yogis. On the other hand, any home without a connection to Lord Krishna is in fact a prison cell of material existence. Finally, Brahma offered his whole self at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Praising him again and again, circumambulated him and took his leave. Lord Krishna then gathered the animals Brahma stole and led them to the place on the Yamuna's bank where the cowherd boys had been taking lunch. The same friends who had been present before were sitting there now. By the power of Krishna's illusory energy, they were not aware of what had happened. Thus Krishna arrived with the calves. The boys told him, You've returned so quickly. Very good. As long as you were gone, we couldn't take even a morsel of food. So come and eat. Laughing at the words of the cowherd boys, Lord Krishna began taking his meal in their company. While eating, Krishna pointed out to his young friends the skin of the python. And the boys thought, Krishna has just now killed this terrible snake. Indeed, later they related to the residents of Vrindavan the incident of Krishna's killing the Agha demon. In this way, the cowherd boys described pastimes that Lord Krishna had performed in his Balya age, 1 to 5, even though his Pauganda age, 6 to 10, had begun. Shukadeva Goswami concludes this chapter by explaining how the gopis loved Lord Krishna even more than they loved their own sons. Shri Brahma Vacha Namidyate Prapushetadidam Braya Gunjavats Tamsa Paripichala Sanmukhaya Vanyashraje Kavala Vetre Vishana Venu Lakshma Shriye Mridupade Pashupanga Jaya. Lord Brahma said, My dear Lord, you are the only worshipable Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore I offer my humble obeisances and prayers just to please you. O son of the king of the cowherds, your transcendental body is dark blue like a new cloud. Your garment is brilliant like lightning, and the beauty of your face is enhanced by your gunja earrings and the peacock feather on your head. Wearing garlands of various forest flowers and leaves, and equipped with a herding stick, a buffalo horn, and a flute, you stand beautifully with a morsel of food in your hand. In the previous chapter, the creator, Brahma, the creator of the universe, tried to bewilder the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, by stealing his coward boy friends and calves. But by a slight exhibition of Krishna's own mystic potency, Brahma himself was completely bewildered, and now with great humility and devotion, he offers his humble obeisances and prayers unto the Lord. The word Kabbalah in this verse refers to a morsel of rice mixed with yogurt that Krishna held in his left hand. According to Sanatana Goswami, the Lord held a cow herding stick and a buffalo horn pressed under his left arm, and his flute was placed under his belt. Beautiful young Krishna, decorated with multicolored forest minerals, exhibited opulences far greater than those of Vaikuntha. Although Brahma had seen innumerable four-armed forms of the Lord, he now surrendered unto the lotus feet of the two-armed form of Krishna, who appeared as the son of Nanda Maharaj. Brahma offered his prayers to that form. Asyapi deva vapusho madanugrahasya svecha mayasya natu bhutamas mayasya kopi nishe mahitva vasitum manasantarena sakshat vaiva kimutatma sukhanubhute. My dear Lord, neither I nor anyone else can estimate the potency of this transcendental body of yours, which has shown such mercy to me, and which appears just to fulfill the desires of your pure devotees. Although my mind is completely withdrawn from material affairs, I cannot understand your personal form. How then could I possibly understand the happiness you experience within yourself? In Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chapter 14, Srila Prabhupada explains that in the present verse, Lord Brahma expressed the following prayerful sentiment. Your appearance as a coward child is for the benefit of the devotees, and although I have committed offenses at your lotus feet by stealing away your cows, boys, and calves, I can understand you are now showing me your mercy. That is your transcendental quality. You are very affectionate toward your devotees. Yet in spite of your affection for me, I cannot estimate the potency of your bodily activities. It is to be understood then, when I, Lord Brahma, the Supreme Personality of God, the personality of this universe, cannot estimate the childlike body, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then what to speak of others? And if I cannot estimate the spiritual potency of your childlike body, then what can I understand about your transcendental pastimes? Therefore, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, anyone who can understand a little of the transcendental pastimes, appearance, and the experience of the Lord immediately becomes eligible to enter the kingdom of God after quitting the material body. This statement is confirmed in the Vedas and is stated simply, by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can overcome the chain of repeated birth and death. I therefore recommend that people should not try to understand you by their speculative knowledge. When Brahma disrespected the supreme status of the Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna first bewildered him by exhibiting the Lord's own transcendental power. Then, having humbled his devotee Brahma, Krishna gave him his personal audience. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Lord Krishna's transcendental body can also function through the agency of his plenary expansions called Vishnu Tattva, as stated by Brahma himself in the Brahma Samhita, Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti. This verse indicates not only that the Lord can perform any bodily function with any of his limbs, but also he can see through the eyes of his Vishnu expansions, or indeed through the eyes of any living entity. Similarly, that he can hear through the ears of any Vishnu or Jiva expansion. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that although the Lord can perform any function with any one of his senses, his transcendental pastimes, as Sri Krishna, he generally sees with his eyes, touches with his hands, hears with his ears, and so on. Thus he behaves like the most beautiful and charming young cowherd boy. The Vedic knowledge expands from Lord Brahma, who is described in the verse of Srimad Bhagavatam as Adi Kavi, the primeval Vedic scholar. Yet Brahma could not understand the transcendental body of Lord Krishna because it is beyond the reach of ordinary Vedic knowledge. Among all the transcendental forms of the Lord, the two-armed form of Govinda, Krishna, is original and supreme. Thus, Lord Govinda's pastimes of stealing butter, drinking gopis' breast milk, tending the calves, playing his flute, and playing childhood sports are ordinary even in comparison with the activities of the Lord's are extraordinary even in comparison with the activities of the Lord Vishnu's expansions. Jnane prayasumudapasya namanta eva jivanti samukharitam Bhavadiyavartam sthane stita shrutigatam tanuvan manobhir ye prayaso jita jato pyasitaistrilokyam. Those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge and with their body, words, and mind offer all respects to descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees, certainly conquer your lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds. Here, the word udapasya clearly indicates that one should not even slightly endeavor to understand the absolute truth by the process of mental speculation, for it invariably carries one to an imperfect, impersonal understanding of God. The word jivanti indicates that a devotee who always hears about Lord Krishna will go back home, back to Godhead, even if he can do nothing except maintain his existence and hear topics concerning the Lord. Srila Sanatana Goswami has explained the words Tanuvan Manobi by the body, words, and mind in three ways. In reference to devotees, through their body, words, and mind, they are able to conquer Lord Krishna, thus becoming perfect in Krishna consciousness. They can touch his lotus feet with their hands, call him to come with their words, and attain his direct audience within their mind simply by thinking about him. In the case of non-devotees, the words Tanuvan Manobi refer to the word Ajita, unconquered, and indicated that those not engaged in loving service of Lord Krishna cannot conquer the absolute truth by their bodily strength, verbal expertise, or mental power. Despite all their endeavors, the ultimate truth remains beyond their reach. In reference to the word Jita, conquered, the words Tanuvan Manobi indicate that the pure devotees of Lord Krishna conquer his body, words, and mind. Lord Krishna's body is conquered because he always remains by the side of his pure devotees. Lord Krishna's words are conquered because he always chants the glories of his devotees. And Lord Krishna's mind is conquered because he always thinks about his loving devotees. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has explained the words Tanuvan Manobi in regard to the word Namanta, offering obeisances. He explains that devotees can take full advantage of the transcendental topics of the Lord by offering all respects to the topics with their body, words, and mind. We should engage in his body by touching the ground with his hands and head while offering obeisances to the topics of the Lord. One should engage his words by praising transcendental literatures such as Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, as well as the devotees who are preaching such literatures. And one should engage his mind by feeling great reverence and pleasure while hearing the transcendental topics of the Lord. In this way, a sincere devotee who has acquired even a small amount of transcendental knowledge about Lord Krishna can conquer him, thus go back home, back to Godhead, for eternal life at the Lord's side. Shreya Sutim Bhakti Mudasya Te Vibho Klishyanti Ye Kevala Bodha Labdaye Tesham Asau Klesha Eva Shishyate Nanyat Yatastula Tushava. My dear Lord, devotional service unto you is the best path of self-realization. If someone gives up that path and engages in the cultivation of speculative knowledge, he will simply undergo a troublesome process and will not achieve the desired result, as a person who beats an empty husk of wheat cannot get grain. One who simply speculates cannot achieve self-realization. His only gain is trouble. Loving service to the Supreme Person is the natural and eternal function of every living entity. If a person renounces his own constitutional function and instead laboriously seeks so-called enlightenment through impersonal speculative knowledge, his result is simply the trouble and bother that come from following an artificial process. A fool may beat an empty husk, not knowing that the grain has already been removed. Similarly, foolish is the person who throws his mind again and again into the pursuit of knowledge without surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is the very substance and goal of knowledge, just as grain is the substance and goal of the entire agricultural effort. Vedic knowledge, or indeed material science without personality, is exactly like an empty and useless husk of wheat. One may argue that by practicing yoga or cultivating impersonal knowledge, one can acquire prestige, wealth, mystic powers, or even impersonal liberation. But these so-called gains are actually useless because they do not situate living beings in the constitutional position of loving service of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, such results, being superfluous to the living being's essential nature, are impermanent. As stated in the Nrsimha Purana, Patreshu Pushpeshu Phaleshu Toeshva Krita Labhyeshu Vadaiva Tastu Bhaktya Sulabhya Purushe Purane Muktai Kim Artham Kriyate Prayatna. Since the primeval personality of God is easily attained by offering Him such things as leaves, flowers, fruits, and flowers, which are all found without difficulty, why does one need to endeavor for liberation separately? Although the process of devotional service to the Lord is very simple, it is extremely difficult for stubborn, conditioned souls to completely humble themselves before the Supreme Personality of Godhead and absorb themselves 24 hours a day in His loving service. The mood of loving service is anathema to belligerent, conditioned souls determined to defy God and enjoy. When such stubborn, conditioned souls attempt to bypass surrendering to God through proud attempts at philosophical speculation, austerity, and yoga, they turn back to the material platform by the powerful laws of God and violently merge into the heavy, heaving ocean of insignificance called the material world. Pureha bhuman bahavopi yoginas Tvadarpiteha nija karma labdhaya Vibuddhya bhaktyaiva kathopanityataya Prapedirenjo chutate gatim param. O Almighty Lord, in the past many yogis in this world achieved the platform of devotional service by offering all their endeavors unto You and faithfully carrying out their prescribed duties through such devotional service. Perfected by the processes of hearing and chatting about You, they came to understand You, O Infallible One, and could easily surrender to You and achieve Your supreme abode. Tatapi bhuman mahima gunasyate vibodhumarhatyamalantar atmabhi avikriyat svanubhavad arupato Yananya bodhyatmataya nachanyata. Non-devotees, however, cannot realize You in Your full personal feature. Nevertheless, it may be possible for them to realize Your expansion as the impersonal Supreme by cultivating direct perception of the Self within the heart. But they can do this only by purifying their mind and senses of all conceptions of material distinctions and all attachments to material sense objects. Only in this way Your impersonal feature manifests itself to them. It is difficult for conditioned souls to understand all the transcendental features of the Supreme Lord as confirmed in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahmeti Paramatme Bhagwaneti Shabdete. In the transcendental existence of God is understood progressively as the impersonal effulgence, the localized super soul in one's heart, and finally the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Existing in His eternal abode, Lord Krishna's transcendental existence is beyond the qualities of material nature. Thus here the Lord is referred as Agunasya, without material qualities. Even by practicing yoga or engaging in advanced philosophical speculation, one will find it very difficult to understand clearly the transcendental existence beyond the modes of material nature, and these processes are virtually useless for understanding the Lord's own unlimited transcendental qualities, which are far beyond the impersonal conception of material existence. Only by the mercy of the pure devotees of the Lord, or by associating with the Lord Himself, can one begin the process of realizing the personal feature of God, a process that culminates in pure Krishna consciousness, the final and supreme perfection of knowledge. Gunatmanaste pi gunan vimatum hita vitirnasya ka ishiresya kalena pair yair va vimita sukalpair bhupam sava ke mihika dubhasa. In time, learned philosophers or scientists might be able to count all the atoms of the earth, the particles of snow, or perhaps even the shining molecules radiating from the sun, the stars, and other luminaries. But among these learned men, who could possibly count the unlimited transcendental qualities possessed by You, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who have descended onto the surface of the earth for the benefit of all living entities? Srila Sanatana Goswami explains that Lord Krishna is Gunatma, the soul of all superior qualities. Because He gives them life, for example, one may discuss in an abstract way such qualities as generosity, intelligence, and mercy. but they come to life only when a living person exhibits them. Thus, Lord Krishna is Gunatma because he descends to the material world and re-established religious principles by exhibiting all godly qualities himself and inspiring them in others. A living entity who develops the transcendental qualities found in the Lord receives immeasurable benefit and eventually goes with the Lord back to his own abode, where all living beings are liberated and fully endowed with transcendental nature. Srila Sanatana Goswami further explains that the Lord manifests a specific spiritual quality for the benefit of each living entity. Since there are innumerable living entities within the confines of the material creation, the Lord manifests infinite qualities. Thus, every conditioned soul can appreciate the Supreme Lord in a particular way. The example is given here that even if the most learned scholars could someday count the particles of earth, snow, and light, they would still fail to understand the qualities of the Lord. In this example, earth, snow, and light are progressively more subtle. Thus, it is to be understood that there is an increasing difficulty in counting their virtually infinite particles. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, great personalities like Lord Shankarshan actually have counted the numbers of atoms of the earth and even the molecules in the entire universe. Yet even such personalities as Sankarshan, who has been continuously chanting the glories of the Lord since time immemorial, has not even approached the final count of those glories. Lord Krishna exhibits the most astonishing qualities during his childhood pastimes in Vrindavan, where he steals butter from the cowherd ladies, dances with his girlfriends, and plays with his cowherd boyfriends as their most dear companion. Although appearing like ordinary human activities, such sublime pastimes embody Lord Krishna's immeasurable and innumerable beautiful transcendental qualities, which are the life and soul of the pure devotees. Tate nukampam susamikshmano bhunjana evatna kritam vipakam ritvagva purbir vidadhan namaste jiviti yo mukti pade sadhaya bhak. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering your respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. Srila Sridhar Swami explains in his commentary that just as the legitimate son has to simply remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father, one who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead. In other words, he will be promoted to the kingdom of God. The word susamikshamana indicates that a devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that a devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma. However, because in his mind a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful actions. The purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord, and therefore the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail the mentality that produced the activity. Although a devotee has surrendered to the Lord's devotional service until he is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy false happiness of this world. Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. This unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically karmic reaction. It is rather the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to completely let go of the material world, return home back to Godhead. A sincere devotee earnestly desires to go back to the Lord's abode. Therefore, he willingly accepts the Lord's merciful punishment and continues offering respects and obeisances to the Lord with his heart, words, and body. Such a bona fide servant of the Lord, considering all hardships a small price to pay for gaining the personal association of the Lord, certainly becomes a legitimate son of God. As indicated here by the words Daya Bahak, just as one cannot approach the sun without becoming fire. One cannot approach the Supreme Pure Lord Krishna without undergoing a rigid purificatory process, which may appear like suffering, but which is in fact a curative treatment administered by the personal hand of the Lord. Pashyesha me naryam nananta adye paratmani tvayapi atmai mayini mayam vitatye chitum atma vaibham bhavam yaham kiyan aicham ivarchir agno. My Lord, just see my uncivilized impudence. To test your power, I tried to extend my illusory potency to cover you, the unlimited and primeval supersoul, who bewilder even the masters of illusion. What am I compared to you? I am just like a small spark in the presence of a great fire. A great fire produces many sparks, which are insignificant in comparison to it. Indeed, if one of the small sparks were trying to burn the original fire, the attempt would be simply ludicrous. Similarly, even the creator of the entire universe, Lord Brahma, is an insignificant spark of the potency of God, and therefore Brahma's attempt to bewilder the Supreme Lord was certainly ludicrous. Brahma here addresses Lord Krishna as Isha, which indicates that Krishna is not only the supreme master of everyone, but is also specifically the master of Brahma, who creates the universe directly under the guidance of the Lord, who, indeed, is born directly from the Lord's own body. Brahma felt ashamed of his impudent attempt of deluding Lord Krishna, and he was therefore perfectly willing to be punished or forgiven by the Lord according to his decision. Lord Krishna does not mercifully punish his devotee when they act improperly. Their foolishness will simply increase and gradually completely overwhelm their devotional sentiments. Therefore, Lord Krishna kindly disciplines his devotees and maintains them on the progressive path back to Godhead. Atha kshama svachyutame rajo bhuvo yajannatastva kritagisha manina ajavale panda tamonda chakshusha esho nukampyo mai nathavaniti. Therefore, O infallible Lord, kindly excuse my offenses. I have taken birth in the mode of passion, and am therefore simply foolish, presuming myself and a controller independent of your lordship. My eyes are blinded by the darkness of ignorance, which causes me to consider myself as the unborn creator of the universe. But please consider that I am your servant and therefore worthy of your compassion. In his commentary, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Brahma wanted to present the following argument to the Lord. My dear Lord, because I have acted so badly, I certainly deserve to be punished. On the other hand, because I am so ignorant, you should consider me an innocent fool and be merciful to me. Thus, although I deserve both punishment and forgiveness, I humbly beg you to exercise tolerance in this matter and simply forgive me and show me your mercy. The words Nathavan iti indicate that Lord Brahma wanted to humbly remind Lord Krishna that he was, after all, Brahma's father and master, and should therefore forgive the unfortunate transgressions of his humble servant. Every conditioned soul, whether he be Lord Brahma or an insignificant ant, falsely identifies himself with the material world and in this way forgets his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma, because of his prestigious position as the cosmic creator, also tends to identify himself as the Lord of this world, and thus he sometimes forgets his position as an insignificant servant of the Supreme Lord. Now, by Lord Krishna's mercy, this false identification is being rectified, and Lord Brahma is remembering his constitutional position as the eternal servant of God. Kantamo mahadaham ka charagni vargu samvestitanda ghata saptavitastikaya Kvedrig vidha viganitanda paranucharya vatadvaroma vivarasya chete mahitvam. What am I, a small creature measuring 7 spans of my own hand? I am enclosed in the pot-like universe composed of material nature. The total material energy, false ego, air, ether, air, water, and earth. What is your glory? Unlimited universes pass through the pores of your body just as particles of dust pass through the openings of a screen window. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela chapter 5 text 72, Srila Prabhupada gives the following purport for this verse. Lord Brahma, after having stolen all Krishna's cows and cowherd boys, returned and saw that the cows and boys were still roaming with Krishna. He offered his prayers in his defeat, and conditioned soul, even one so great as Brahma, who manages the affairs of the entire universe, cannot compare to the personality of Godhead, for he can produce numberless universes simply by the spiritual rays emanating from the pores of his body. Material scientists should take lessons from the utterances of Sri Brahma regarding our insignificance in comparison with God. In these prayers of Brahma, there is so much to learn for those who are falsely puffed up by the accumulation of power. In Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chapter 14, Srila Prabhupada further comments on this verse. Lord Brahma realizes his actual position. He is certainly the supreme teacher in this universe, in charge of the production of the material nature, which consists of the complete material elements, false ego, sky, air, fire, water, and earth. Such a universe may be gigantic, but it can be measured just as we measure a body as 7 spans. Generally, everyone's personal bodily measurement is calculated to be 7 spans of his hand. This particular universe may appear to be a very gigantic body, but it is nothing but the measurement of 7 spans for Lord Brahma. Aside from this universe, there are unlimited other universes outside the jurisdiction of this particular Lord Brahma, just as innumerable atomic infinitesimal fragments pass through the holes of a screen window, so millions and trillions of universes in their seedling form are coming out from the bodily pores of Mahavishnu, and that Mahavishnu is but a part of the plenary expansion of Krishna. Under these circumstances, although Lord Brahma is the supreme creature within this universe, what is his importance in the presence of Lord Krishna? Ukshepanam garbhagatasya padayo kim kalpate mataradhoksha jagase kim asti nasti vyapadesha bhushitam tavasti kukshe kiyadapyananta. O Lord Adhokshaja, does a mother take offense when the child within her womb kicks with his legs? And is there anything in existence, whether designated by various philosophers as real or as unreal, that is actually outside your abdomen? Srila Prabhupada comments as follows on the verse in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chapter 14. Lord Brahma therefore compared himself to a little child within the womb of his mother. If the child within the womb plays with his hands and legs and while playing touches the body of the mother, is the mother offended with the child? Of course she isn't. Similarly, Lord Brahma may be a very great personality, and yet not only Brahma, but everything that exists is within the womb of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord's energy is all-pervading. There is no place in the creation where it is not acting. Since everything is existing within the energy of the Lord, so Lord Brahma of this universe, or the Brahmas of many other millions and trillions of universes, are existing within the energy of the Lord. Therefore, the Lord is considered to be the mother, and everything existing within the womb of the mother is considered to be the child. And the good mother is never offended with the child, even if he touches the body of the mother by kicking his legs. Jagatrayanto dadi samplavo de narayanas Yodara nabhinalat vinirgato jastviti vannavainusha kintvishvara tvanna vinirgatosmi. My dear Lord, it is said that when the 3 planetary systems are merged into the water, and at that time water at the time of dissolution, your plenary portion Narayan lies down on the water gradually. A lotus flower grows from his navel, and Brahma takes birth upon that lotus flower. Certainly these words are not false. Thus am I not born from you? Although every living being is a child of God, Brahma here makes a special claim because he takes birth on a lotus flower that emanates from the navel of Narayan, the personality of Godhead. Ultimately, all living beings are equally expansions of the transcendental body of the Supreme Lord. But Brahma has an intimate relationship with the Lord because of the activities of universal creation. So he uses the prefix V in the word Vinirgata to beg the Lord's special mercy. Lord Brahma is called Aja because he is not born from any mother, but rather emanates directly from the body of the Lord. As Srila Prabhupada states in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is naturally concluded that the mother of Brahma is Narayan. On these grounds, Lord Brahma is requesting special forgiveness for his offenses. Narayanastvam nahi sarva dehinam atmasya dikshakila loka sakshi Narayanongam narabhujala yanat tachapi satyanata vaiva maya. Are you not the original Narayan, O Supreme Controller, since you are the soul of every embodied being and eternal witness of all created realms? Indeed, Lord Narayan is your expansion, and he is called Narayan because he is the generating source of the primeval water of the universe. He is real, not a product of your illusory Maya. The Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela chapter 2 text 30, Srila Prabhupada comments on the verse as follows. This statement was spoken by Lord Brahma in his prayers to Lord Krishna after the Lord defeated him by displaying his mystic powers. Brahma had tried to test Lord Krishna to see if he was really the Supreme Personality of Godhead, playing as a coward boy. Brahma stole all the other boys and their cows from the pasturing grounds, but when he returned to the pastures, he saw that all the boys and cows were still there, for Lord Krishna had created them all again. When Brahma saw this mystic power of Lord Krishna, he admitted defeat and offered prayers to the Lord, dressing him as a proprietor and seer of everything in the creation, and as the super soul who is within each and every living entity and is dear to all. Lord Krishna is Narayan, the father of Brahma, because Lord Krishna's plenary expansion, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, after placing himself in the Garbha ocean, created Brahma from his own body. Mahavishnu, in the causal ocean, and Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, the super soul in everyone's heart, are also transcendental expansions of the Supreme Truth. In his commentary of the verse, Srila Sanatana Goswami has elaborately explained the expansion of the Vishnu or Narayan incarnations from the original form of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The essence is that although Lord Brahma was born from Lord Narayan, Brahma now understands that Narayan is himself a mere expansion of the original personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. Tache jalastam tavasad jagadvapu kim mena drishtam bhagavams tadaiva kim vasu drishtam hridime tadaiva kim no sapadyeva punarvya darshi. My dear Lord, if your transcendental body which shelters the entire universe is actually lying upon the water, then why were you not seen by me when I searched for you? And why, although I could not envision you properly within my heart, did you then suddenly reveal yourself? Lord Brahma here refers to the experience at the dawn of cosmic creation. As described in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Brahma took birth in the seat of a giant lotus whose stem emanated from the navel of Narayan. Brahma was bewildered as to his whereabouts, function, and identity, and therefore he tried to trace out the source of the lotus stem, searching for clear information. Unable to find the personality of Godhead, he returned to his seat and engaged in severe austerities, having been ordered to do so by the transcendental voice of the Lord, who could be heard but not seen. After long meditation, Brahma saw the Lord, but then again lost sight of him. Thus Brahma concludes that the transcendental body of the personality of Godhead is not material, but rather an eternal spiritual form endowed with inconceivable mystic potencies. In other words, Lord Brahma should not have challenged the personality of Godhead, the Lord of all mystic power. Atraiva maya damanavatare yasya prapanchasya bahisputasya kritsnasya chantar jadare jananya maya tvameva prakritim kritam te. My dear Lord, in This incarnation you have proved that you are the supreme controller of Maya. Although you are now within this universe, the whole universal creation is within your transcendental body, a fact you demonstrated by exhibiting the universe within your abdomen before your mother Yashoda. Lord Brahma here describes the inconceivable spiritual potency of the Lord. We may find a pot within a house, but we can hardly expect to find the house within the same pot. But the Lord's spiritual potency, however, can appear within the universe and simultaneously exhibit all the universes within his body. One may argue that since the universes seen by Mother Yashoda within the Lord's abdomen were within the Lord's body, they are different from the illusory material universes manifest externally. Here Lord Brahma refutes that argument, however. Lord Krishna is Maya Dhamna, the supreme controller of illusion. By the Lord's own supreme mystic potency, he can bewilder even illusion herself, and thus the Lord actually exhibited all the material universes within his body. This is Mayatvam, the supreme bewildering potency of the personality of Godhead. Yasya kukshav idam sarvam satmam bhati yatha tattvayapiha tatsarvam kimidam maya yavina. Just as the entire universe, including you, is exhibited within your abdomen, so it is now manifested here externally in the same exact form. How could such things happen unless arranged by your inconceivable energy? Srila Prabhupada comments on this verse as follows in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma stressed herein that without accepting the inconceivable energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot explain things as they are. Adyeva tvadritesya kim mamanate mayatvam adrishtam ekosi prathamam tatavraja suhrid vatsa samastapi tavantosi chaturbhujas tadakhilai shakamayopasitas tvantyeva jagantyabhustad amitam brahmadvayam shishyate. Have you not shown me today that both you yourself and everything within this creation are manifest of your inconceivable potency? First you appeared alone, and then you manifested yourself as all of Vrindavan's cows and cowherd boys, your friends. Next you appeared as an equal number of four-handed Vishnu forms who were worshipped by all living beings, including me. And after that you appeared as an equal number of complete universes. Finally, you have now returned to your unlimited form as the Supreme Absolute Truth, one without a second. As stated in the Vedic literature, Sarvam Khalam Idam Brahma. Everything that exists is an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, everything is ultimately parcel of the Lord's spiritual existence. By Lord Krishna's causeless mercy, Lord Brahma personally experienced that all existence, being the potency of God, is non-different from him. Ajanatam tvad padavim anatmanya Ajanatam tvad padavim anatmanya Atmatmana bhasi vitatya mayam Shrishta vivaham jagato vidhana Iva tvameshonta iva trinetra. To persons ignorant of your actual transcendental position, you appear as part of the material world, manifesting yourself by the expansion of your inconceivable energy. Thus, for the creation of the universe, you appear as me, Brahma. For its maintenance, you appear as yourself, Vishnu. For its annihilation, you appear as Lord Trinetra, Shiva. Although the impersonal Mayavadi philosophers think that the demigods are illusory, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu are stated here to be expansions of Lord Supreme Personality of Godhead, and are thus real. Indeed, they are extraordinarily powerful controllers of the universe. The ultimate truth is a supreme and beautiful person, and throughout the creation of God, we will always find the personal touch. Sureshvarishvishisha tathaiva nishvapi Tiryakshu yadhishvapi te janasya Janmasatam durmada nigrahaya Prabho vidhata sadanugrahaya cha. O Lord, the supreme creator and master, you have no material birth, yet to defeat the false pride of the faithless demons and show mercy to your saintly devotees, you take birth among the demigods, sages, human beings, and animals, even the aquatics. Among the demigods, Lord Krishna appears in such forms as Vamana, Deva, among the sages as Parashuram, among human beings as Lord Krishna himself and as Lord Ramchandra, and among animals as the boar incarnation, Lord Krishna appears among the aquatics as Matsya, the gigantic fish. Indeed, the plenary expansions of the Supreme Personality of the Godhead are innumerable, as the Lord relentlessly comes down with the universes to smash the false pride of the atheists and show mercy to the saintly devotees. In another sense, the Lord never appears, since He exists eternally. His appearance is like that of the sun, which is always present in the sky, but which periodically appears to our vision. Koveti bhuman bhagavan paratman yogeshvarotir bhagavatasthi lokyam kvavakatam va kativa kadeti vistarayan kridasi yogamayam. The Supreme Great One, a Supreme Personality of Godhead, O Super Soul, Master of all mystic power, your pastimes are taking place continuously in these three worlds, but who can estimate where, how, and when you're employing your spiritual energy in performing these innumerable pastimes? No one can understand the mystery of how your spiritual energy acts. Brahma previously stated that Lord Krishna incarnates among the demigods, human beings, animals, fish, and so on. This does not mean, however, that the Lord is degraded by his incarnations. As Brahma clarifies here, no conditioned soul can understand the transcendental nature of the Lord's activities, which he enacts through his spiritual potency. Although the Lord is Brahman, the supremely great one, he is still Bhagavan, the supremely beautiful personality, exhibiting pastimes of love in his own abode. At the same time, he is Paramatma, the all-pervading super soul, who witnesses and sanctions all the activities of conditioned souls. The Lord's multiple identity is explained by the term Yogeshwara. The Absolute Truth is the master of all mystic potency, and although he is one and supreme, he manifests his greatness and opulence in many different ways. Such elevated spiritual matters can hardly be understood by foolish persons, primitively identifying themselves with the insignificant material body. These conditioned souls, such as atheistic scientists, consider their own puffed-up intelligence supreme. Gullibly placing their firm faith in material illusion, they are captured by the modes of nature and driven far away from knowledge of God. Tasmadidam jagadashesham asad swarupam swapnabhamastadhisanam purudukka dukkam Tvayeva nitya sukha bodhatanavanante mayat udyadapi yat sadivava bhati. Therefore, this entire universe, which, like a dream, is by nature unreal, nevertheless appears real, and thus it covers one's consciousness and assails one's repeated miseries. This universe appears real because it is manifest by the potency of illusion emanating from you, whose unlimited transcendental forms are full of eternal happiness and knowledge. As an object of enjoyment or a permanent residence for the conditioned souls, the material universe is certainly illusion, nothing more than a dream. One may give the analogy that the vision of the abundant water in a desert is no more than a dream, although real water exists elsewhere. Similarly, the vision of home, happiness, and reality within the matter is certainly no better than a foolish dream in which repeated miseries appear. In another sense, however, the universe is real. Wow. In another sense, however, the universe is real. In his commentary on Vedanta Sutra, Srila Madhvacharya has confirmed this by quoting the following statement from the Vedic Shruti mantra, Satyam Hyevedam Vishwam Ashrujyata. This universe created by the Lord is real. The perfect authority of the Vedas thus certifies the universe to be real. Nevertheless, because our knowledge is stolen by illusion, as indicated here by the words Astadhishanam, We cannot properly understand the universe or the Supreme Lord who has created it. As the expansion of Lord Krishna, the universe is real and is meant for being engaged in His service. One who accepts the kingdom of God as home, the Lord as the object of love, and the material universe as a paraphernalia for being engaged in the Lord's service, dwells within the eternal reality wherever he may go within the material and spiritual worlds. Ekastvam Atma Purusha Purana Satya Swayam Jyotiranantya Adya Nityoksharo Jasra Shukho Niranjana Puranadvayo Mukto Padito Mrita. You are the Supreme Soul, the primeval Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth, self-manifested, endless, and beginningless. You are eternal and infallible, perfect and complete, without any rival, free from all material designations. Your happiness can never be obstructed, nor have you any connection with material contamination. Indeed, you are indestructible, nectar of immortality. Srila Sridhar Swami explains how the various terms of this verse demonstrate that the transcendental body of Lord Krishna is free from the characteristics of material bodies. All material bodies go through 6 phases: birth, growth, maturity, reproduction, decline, and destruction. But Lord Krishna does not take material birth, since he is the original reality, a fact clearly indicated here by the word Adya, original. We take a material birth within a particular material atmosphere in material bodies that are amalgamations of various material elements. Since Lord Krishna existed long before the creation of any material atmosphere or element, there is no question of material birth for his transcendental body. Similarly, the word Purna, meaning full and complete, refutes the conception that Lord Krishna could grow, since he is ever existing in fullness. When one's material body becomes mature, one can no longer enjoy as in youth, but the word Ajasra Sukha, enjoying unobstructed happiness, indicate that Lord Krishna's body never reaches so-called middle age, since it is always full of spiritual, youthful bliss. The word Akshara, undiminishing, refutes the possibility that Lord Krishna's body grows old or declines, and the word Amrita, immortal, negates the possibility of death. In other words, Lord Krishna's transcendental body is free from the transformations of material bodies. Transcendental body is free from the transformations of material bodies. The Lord does, however, create innumerable worlds and expand himself as innumerable living entities. But the Lord's so-called reproduction is completely spiritual and does not take place at a certain phase of bodily existence. Rather, it constitutes the Lord's eternal proclivity to expand his spiritual bliss and glories. As the Lord states in the Shruti, Purvam Evaham, in Shruti, Purvam Evam Ihasam, I alone existed in the beginning. Therefore, here the Lord is called Purusha Purna, the primeval enjoyer. The original Purusha, expands himself as the super soul and enters every living being. Still, he is ultimately the absolute truth. Krishna, as stated in Gopal Tapani Upanishad, Ya Sakshad Parabrahmeti Govindam Satchidananda Vigraham Vrindavana Sura Buruha Talasinam. The absolute truth himself is Govinda, who has an eternal form of bliss and knowledge, and who is sitting beneath the shady desires tree of Vrindavan. The absolute truth is beyond material ignorance and beyond even ordinary spiritual knowledge, as stated in the Gopal Tapani Shruti. Vidya Bhyam Bhinna. Thus, in many ways, the supremacy of Lord Krishna has been established in the Vedic literature, and it is here confirmed by Lord Brahma himself. Evam vidam tvam sakalatmanamapi svatmanam atmatmataya vichakshate guru varka labdho panishad suchakshusha yete tarantiva bhavan buddhim. Those who have received the clear vision of knowledge from the sunlight spiritual master can see you in this way, as the very soul of all souls, the super soul of everyone's own self. Thus, understanding your original personality, they are able to cross over the ocean of illusory material existence. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 4.9, Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattvata tyaktva deham pudarjanma naiti mameti sorjana. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, or Arjuna. Atmanamevatmataya vijanatam tenaiva jatam nikhilam prapanchitam jnanena bhuyopi chatad praliyate rajva mahir bhoga bhavo yatha. A person who mistakes a rope for a snake becomes fearful, but then he gives up his fear upon realizing that the so-called snake does not exist. Similarly, for those who fail to recognize you as the supreme soul of all souls, the expansive illusory material existence arises, but the knowledge of you at once causes it to subside. Those submerged in illusion see material existence as infinite, just as one who is submerged in water sees only water all around him. For example, material scientists and philosophers submerged deep within the ocean of material illusion imagine that the material nature extends infinitely in all directions. In fact, the material creation is a finite ocean of ignorance in which foolish living entities such as material scientists are unceremoniously dumped by the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To be trapped in a world in which all things are born and die is certainly a fearful experience. Anyone trapped in a dark place naturally becomes fearful. Since material life is always covered by the darkness of ignorance, every conditioned soul is fearful. The material nature is not ultimate reality, and thus analysis of matter can never provide answers to ultimate questions. This dark snake-like existence, called material life, immediately disappears as soon as one opens his eyes to the bright light of Krishna consciousness. Jnana samjnano jnau bhavabandha moksho dvau nama nanyo starta jnana bhavat ajasra chityatmani kevale pare vicharyamane tarana vivahani. Conception of material bondage and the conception of liberation are both manifestations of ignorance. Being outside the scope of true knowledge, they cease to exist when one correctly understands that the pure spirit soul is distinct from matter and fully conscious. At that time, bondage and liberation no longer have any significance, just as day and night have no significance from the perspective of the sun. Beautiful verse. Material bondage is illusion because the living entity actually has no relationship with this material world. Because of false ego, the conditioned soul identifies himself with matter. Therefore, so-called liberation is simply the giving up of an illusion rather than release from actual bondage. Yet, even if we think that the suffering of material illusion is real, and that liberation is thus a meaningful release from suffering, the mere absence of material existence is still insignificant compared to the achievement of factual spiritual life, which is the positive, eternal reality opposed to the negative illusion of material life. Ultimately, Krishna consciousness, or pure love of Godhead, is the only significant, meaningful, permanent status of every living entity. Since the darkness of night is caused by the absence of the sun, one would not experience night within the sun itself, nor would one experience individual days separated by nights. Similarly, within the pure living entity, there is no material darkness, and thus no experience of liberation from such darkness. When the conditioned soul comes to this platform of pure consciousness, he becomes fit to associate with the Supreme Pure, the Personality Godhead Himself, in the Lord's own abode. Tvamatmanam paramatva paramatmanam evacha atma punar bahir vriga migya aho jnana janata gnata. Just as the foolishness of those ignorant persons who consider you to be some separated manifestation of illusion, and who consider the self, which is actually you, to be something else, the material body, such fools conclude that the Supreme Soul is to be searched from somewhere outside your Supreme Personality. Lord Brahma is amazed at the gross ignorance of conditioned souls who consider Lord Krishna's supreme spiritual body to be material, ignorant of the spiritual form of the Lord. Such persons also consider their own material bodies to be the self, and therefore they conclude that spiritual reality is to be found somewhere beyond the Supreme Personality of Lord Krishna. Sometimes such fools consider Lord Krishna to be one of the many individual souls who together constitute a single impersonal spiritual entity. Unfortunately, such speculators are not inclined to hear from the Lord himself or from the Lord's authorized representatives, such as Lord Brahma, because they whimsically speculate on the nature of the Supreme. Their ultimate result is confusion and ignorance, and which they euphemistically describe as the mystery of life. Antarbhavenantabhavantameva yatat tyajanto mrigayanti santa asantamapyanantyahim antarena santim gunam tam kimu yanti santa. O unlimited Lord, the saintly devotees seek you out within their own bodies by rejecting everything separate from you. Indeed, how can discriminating persons appreciate the real nature of a rope lying before them until they refute the illusion that it is a snake? One may argue that a person should cultivate self-realization and at the same time pursue sense gratification for the material body. This proposition is herein refuted by the example of misidentifying a rope as a snake. One who mistakes a rope for a snake becomes fearful and thinks of the so-called snake. But upon discovering the so-called snake is actually a rope, he experiences a different emotion relief and can then ignore the rope. Similarly, because we misunderstand the material body to be the self, we're experiencing many emotions in relation to the body. Upon discovering, however, that the body is simply a bag of material chemicals, we carefully note how this illusion was created and then lose interest in the body. Discovering that we are actually an eternal soul within the body, we naturally focus our attention on that real self. Those who are saintly and wise always cultivate Krishna consciousness, spiritual knowledge, having transcended the foolish identification of the body as the self. Such Krishna conscious persons go on to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who dwells within the material body as the super soul, the witness and guide of living entity. Realization of the super soul and the individual soul is so pleasing and satisfying that a self-realized person automatically gives up everything irrelevant to his spiritual advancement. Atapi te deva padambujandraya prasadale sanugrihita eva hi janati tattvam bhagavan mahimno na chanya ekopi chiram vichinvan. My Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. With those who speculate, the understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years. This translation is quoted from Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 6, text 84. Lord Krishna is very eager to bestow his mercy upon the conditioned living beings who are uselessly struggling with the Lord's illusory energy, Maya. The conditioned soul struggles for happiness through sense gratification and for knowledge through mental speculation. Both processes ultimately bring him to a morose and hopeless condition. The conditioned soul surrenders to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and thus acquires even a trace of his causeless mercy. The whole situation is changed, and the living entity can begin his real life of bliss and knowledge in Krishna consciousness. Tadastu me nata sabhuri bhago bhavetra vanyatra tu vatirisham yenahameko pi bhavajjananam Bhutva Nisheve Tava Pada Pallavam. My dear Lord, I therefore pray to be so fortunate that in this life, as Lord Brahma, or in another life, wherever I take my birth, I may be counted as one of your devotees. I pray that wherever I may be, even among the animal species, I can engage in devotional service to your lotus feet. Ahoti Danya Vrajagoramanya Stanya Mritam Pitam Ativa Te Muda Yasam Vibho Vatsataratma Jatmana Yatriptaye Dyapi Nachalam Advara. O Almighty Lord, how greatly fortunate are the cows and ladies of Vrindavan, the nectar of whose breast milk you have happily drunk to your full satisfaction, taking the form of their calves and children. All the Vedic sacrifices performed from time immemorial up to the present day have not given you as much satisfaction. Aho bhagyam nanda gopa vrajaukasham mitram paramanandam purnam brahma sanatanam. How greatly fortunate are Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd men, and all the other inhabitants of Rajabhumi. There's no limit to their good fortune, because the Absolute Truth, the source of transcendental bliss, the eternal Supreme Brahman, has become their friend. This translation is quoted from Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 6, text 149. Esham tu bhagya mahimachyuta tavade ashtam ekadasaiva hi vyayam bhata bhuri bhaga etadrishika chasakaira sakrit pibama sarvadayon dayongriudaja madvamritasvam te. Yet even though the extent of good fortune of these residents of Vrindavan is inconceivable, we 11 presiding deities of the various senses headed by Lord Shiva are also most fortunate, because the senses of these devotees of Vrindavan are the cups through which we repeatedly drink the nectarian intoxicating beverage of honey of your lotus feet. Tad bhuri bhagyam iha janma kimapyat Atavyam yad gokulepi katamangri rajobhishekam yajivitam tu nikhilam bhagavan mukundas tvadyapi yad padaraja shruti mrigyameva. My greatest possible good fortune would be to take any birth, whatever in this forest of Gokula, and have my head bathed by the dust falling from the lotus feet of its residents. Their entire life and soul is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Mukunda, the dust of whose lotus feet is still being searched for in the Vedic mantras. This verse indicates that Lord Brahma desires to take birth even as the smallest blade of grass in Vrindavan, so that the holy residents of the Lord's abode may walk upon his head and bless him with the dust of their feet. Being realistic, Lord Brahma does not aspire to directly achieve the dust of Lord Krishna's feet. Rather, he aspires for the mercy of the Lord's devotees. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Brahma is willing to take birth even as a stone in a paved footpath in the Lord's abode. Since Brahma is the creator of the entire universe, we can just imagine the glorious position of the residents of Vrindavan. Lord's devotees achieve the exalted position by unalloyed devotion and love. One cannot achieve such spiritual opulence by any puffed up material process of personal improvement. In Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada reveals the mind of Brahma as follows. But if I am not fortunate as to take birth within the forests of Vrindavan, I beg to be allowed to take birth outside the immediate area of Vrindavan, so that when the devotees go out, they will walk over me. Even that would be a great fortune for me. I am aspiring for a birth in which I will be smeared by the dust of the devotees' feet. Esham Gosha Nivasina Mutta Bhavan Kim Deva Ratiti Nash Cheto Vishwa Phalat Phalam Tvadaparam Kutrapya Yanmuhyati Sadvesad Iva Putana Pisas Kulatvam Eva Deva Pita Yadhamar Dhamartha Suhrit Priyatmatanaya Pranashayastvat Krite. My mind becomes bewildered just trying to think of what reward other than you could be found anywhere. You are the embodiment of all benedictions which you bestow upon these residents of the coward community of Vrindavan. You have already arranged to give yourself to Putna, her family members, in exchange for her disguising herself as a devotee. So what is left for you to give these devotees of Vrindavan, whose homes, wealth, and friends, dear relations, bodies, children, very lives and hearts are all dedicated only to you? Tavad ragadayas tenas Tavat kara griham griham Tavan mohomri nigaro Yavad Krishna na tejana. My dear Lord Krishna, until people become your devotees, their material attachments and desires remain thieves, their homes remain prisons, and their affectionate feelings for their family members remain foot shackles. Apparently, the residents of Vrindavan, the abode of Lord Krishna, are simply householders engaged in ordinary affairs such as herding cows, cooking, rearing children, and performing religious ceremonies. However, all these activities are intensely engaged in the loving service of Lord Krishna. The residents of Vrindavan perform all activities in pure Krishna consciousness and thus exist on the most exalted platform of liberated life. Otherwise, the same activities performed without Krishna consciousness constitute ordinary bondage to the material world. Thus, one should not misunderstand the exalted position of the residents of Vrindavan, nor should one consider oneself highly religious simply because one performs ordinary domestic affairs very enthusiastically, but without Krishna consciousness. By focusing our passionate attachments on our family and society, we are completely deviated from the progressive path of Krishna consciousness. Conversely, if we engage our family in the loving service of the Lord, our endeavors to maintain our family become part and parcel of our progressive spiritual duties. In conclusion, by studying the extraordinary status of the residents of Vrindavan, we can see that the essential quality of their lives is pure Krishna consciousness. The rendering of loving service to the Lord without a trace of material desire or mental speculation. Such loving service to the original personality of Godhead immediately creates the atmosphere of Sri Vrindavan Dham, the kingdom of God. Prapancham nishprapanchopi vadam bhayasputale prapanna janatananda sandhoham pratitum prabhu. My dear Master, although you have nothing to do with material existence, you come to this earth and imitate material life just to expand the varieties of ecstatic enjoyment for your surrendered devotees. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that just as a lamp does not seem to shine as brightly in the sunlight as it does in the shade, or as a diamond does not seem as brilliant on a silver platter as it does on a plate of blue glass, the Lord's pastime as Govinda does not seem as amazing in the transcendental abode of Vaikuntha as they do within the realm of Maya. Lord Krishna comes to the earth and acts towards his pure devotees exactly like a devoted son, boyfriend, husband, father, friend, and so on, within the darkness of material existence. These brilliant, liberated pastimes give unlimited ecstasy to the surrendered devotees of the Lord. In Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada quotes Lord Brahma as follows: I can also understand that your appearance as a small coward boy, a child of the coward men, is not at all material activity. You are so much obliged by their affection that you are here to enthuse them with more loving service by your transcendental presence. Jananta eva janantu kimbahu tya name prabhu manaso vapuso vacho vaibhavam tava gochara. There are people who say, I know everything about Krishna. Let them think that way. As far as I am concerned, I do not wish to speak very much about this matter. O my Lord, let me say this much. As far as your opulences are concerned, they are all beyond the reach of my mind, body, and words. This translation is quoted in Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 21. Anujanihi Mam Krishna Sarvam Tvam Vetsi Sarvadrik Tvameva Jagatam Natho Jagadetat Tavarpitam. My dear Krishna, I now humbly request permission to leave. Actually, you are the knower and seer of all things. Indeed, you are the Lord of all universes, and yet I offer this one universe unto you. Wow. In this Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada has quoted Lord Brahma as follows: My dear Lord, although you are the Supreme Lord of all creation, I sometimes falsely think I am the master of this universe. I may be master of this universe, but there are innumerable universes and there are also innumerable Brahmas who preside over these universes. But actually, you are the master of all of them. As a super soul in everyone's heart, you know everything. Please therefore accept me as your surrendered servant. I hope that you will excuse me for disturbing you in your pastimes with your friends and calves. Now, if you will kindly allow me, I will immediately leave so you can enjoy your friends and calves without my presence. The words sarvam tvam vetsi sarvadrik are very significant here. Lord Krishna knows everything and sees everything, and therefore Lord Brahma did not need to remain in Vrindavan to maintain his personal loving contact with the Lord. In fact, as the creator of the universe, Lord Brahma was somewhat out of place in the simple, blissful atmosphere of Vrindavan, where Lord Krishna was exhibiting his supreme opulences and herding cows, enjoying picnics, playing games, and so on. Upon seeing the intense love of the residents of Vrindavan, had for Lord Krishna, Brahma felt unqualified to remain there. He was not eager to give up the Lord's association, but he felt it better to return to his personal devotional service in Brahmaloka. Somewhat embarrassed and unhappy over his foolish attempt at bewildering the Lord, Brahma preferred to resume his transcendental loving service rather than to enjoy the Lord's presence. Sri Krishna Vrishni Kula Pushkara Joshadayin Kshima Nirjara Dvija Pashuddadhi Riddhi Karin Uddharma Sarvara Harakshiti Rakshasa Drug Akalpam Arkam Arhan Bhagavan Namaste. My dear Sri Krishna, you bestow happiness upon the lotus-like Vrishni dynasty and expand the great oceans consisting the earth, the demigods, the brahmanas, and the cows. Dispel the dense darkness of irreligion and impose the demons who have appeared on this earth. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, as long as this universe exists, as long as the sun shines, I will offer my obeisances unto you. According to Srila Sanatana Goswami, Lord Brahma here engaged in the ecstasy of Nam Sankirtan, glorifying various holy names of Lord Krishna that indicate his variegated pastimes. Lord Krishna expertly suppressed the demoniac population of the earth, which became unbearable with the advent of demoniac politicians like Kamsa, Jarasandha, and Shishupal. Similarly, in modern society, there are many so-called God-fearing people who are actually attracted to demoniac existence. Such persons become enlivened when the setting of the sun and go out in the darkness to enjoy life in restaurants, nightclubs, discotheques, hotels, and so on, which are all simply meant for illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. Then there are those who openly defy God and his laws, declaring themselves atheists and demons. But the covert and the overt enemies of the Lord constitute an unholy burden for the earth, and Lord Krishna descends to expertly remove this burden. Here Lord Brahma indirectly states that Lord Krishna should remove Brahma's own subtle atheism, which had led him to try to exert illusory power over Lord Krishna. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Lord Brahma in his shame felt himself to be like Brahma Rakshasa from Satyaloka, who had come to the earth to disturb Lord Krishna and his intimate friends and calves. Brahma is lamenting that although Krishna is most exalted, the Lord of all lords, because he had appeared before Brahma in such a simple and innocent feature, decorated with a stick, a conch shell, ornament, red clay, a peacock feather, and so on, and sporting with his coward boyfriends, Brahma dared to challenge him. Concerning Brahma's prayers, of which this verse is the conclusion, Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states, "May these prayers of Brahma, which take away all doubts and broadcast all the definitive conclusions of devotion service, become expert craftsmanship of the foundation of my consciousness." Shri Shukha Vacha iti abhishtuya bhumanam triparikramya padayo natva bhikshtam jagadhata swadhama pratyapadyata. Shukadev Goswami said, having thus offered his prayers, Brahma circumambulated his worshipable Lord, the unlimited personality of Godhead, 3 times and then bowed down at his lotus feet. The appointed creator of the universe, then returned to his own residence. Although Lord Brahma had prayed to take birth as a blade of grass in Vrindavan, or even in the area surrounding Vrindavan, Lord Krishna, by a silent response to Brahma's prayers, indicated that Brahma should return to his own abode. First, Brahma had to complete his own personal devotional service of universal creation, then he could come to Vrindavan and get mercy of the inhabitants there. In other words, the devotee should always be attentive to executing his personal devotional service properly. This is more important than trying to live in the Lord's abode. Wow. Tato nunyapya bhagavan swabhuvam prag avastitan vatsan pulinam aninye yata purva sakam swakam. After granting his son Brahma permission to leave the Supreme Personality of Godhead to calves who were still where they had been a year earlier, and brought them to the riverbank where he had been taking his meal, and where his coward boyfriends remained just as before. The word swabhuvam, to his own son, indicates that Lord Krishna forgave the offense Brahma had committed and treated him with affection as his son. It is stated in this verse that the original coward boyfriends and calves were situated just as before, near the bank of the Yamuna River and in the forest respectively. Previously, the calves had disappeared within the forest, and Lord Krishna had gone to search for them. Not finding them, the Lord had returned to the riverbank to discuss the situation with his coward boyfriends, but they had also disappeared. Now the cows were once again in the forest, and the boyfriends once again in the bank of the river, ready to take their lunch. According to Srila Sanatana Goswami, the calves and boys remained in the forest and on the riverbank, respectively, for 1 full year. Lord Brahma did not actually take them away to another place. By the Lord's omnipotent illusory energy, the gopis and the other residents of Vrindavan did not notice the calves and boys, nor did the calves and boys notice passing of a year's time, or feel any hunger, cold, or thirst. All this was part of the pastime arranged by the Lord's illusory potency. Lord Brahma thought, I have kept all the boys and calves of Gokula sleeping on the bed of my mystic potency, and to this very day they have not risen. A similar number of boys and calves have been playing with Krishna for 1 whole year, yet they are different from the ones illusioned by my mystic potency. Who are they? Where did they come from? Nothing is invisible to the Supreme Lord. Thus Lord Krishna appeared to be searching for the calves and boys, only to enact the dramatic pastimes of bewildering Lord Brahma. After Brahma surrendered and offered prayers, Lord Krishna returned to the original boys and calves, who appeared exactly as before, although their size had somewhat increased because of 1 year's growth. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, since Lord Krishna was playing exactly like an innocent young coward boy in Vrindavan, after four-headed Brahma offered his prayers, the Lord maintained his role as a young coward boy and thus remained silent before Brahma. Krishna's silence indicates that following thoughts: where did the four-headed Brahma come from? What is he doing? What are these words he keeps speaking? I am busy looking for my calves. I am just a coward boy and do not understand all this. Lord Brahma had considered Lord Krishna an ordinary coward boy and had treated him as such. After accepting Brahma's prayer, Krishna continued to play as a coward boy and thus did not answer the four-headed Brahma. Rather, Krishna was more interested in rejoining his coward boyfriends for the picnic lunch on the bank of the Yamuna River. Ekasminapi yatebde pranesham chantaratmana Krishna maya hatha rajan kshanardham menirer bhakah. O king, although the boys had passed an entire year apart from the Lord of their very lives, they had been covered by Lord Krishna's illusory potency and considered that year merely a half moment. Kim na vismarantiha maya mohita chetasa yan mohitam jagat sarvam abhikshanam vismritatmakam. What indeed is not forgotten by those whose minds are bewildered by the Lord's illusory potency. And that power of Maya, his entire universe remains in perpetual bewilderment, and his atmosphere of forgetfulness, no one can understand his own identity. It is clearly stated here that the entire universe is bewildered. Thus, even great demigods like Indra and Brahma are not exempt from the principle of forgetfulness. Since Lord Krishna exercised his internal illusory potency over his coward boyfriends and calves, it is not at all astonishing that for 1 year they could not remember their position. Indeed, by the Lord's external illusory potency, the conditioned souls forget their existence not only for a year, but for many billions and billions of years as they transmigrate throughout the kingdom of ignorance called the material world. Uchuscha suhrida krishnam swagatam teti ramhasa nekopya bhoji kavala ehita sadhu bhujatam. The coward boyfriend said to Lord Krishna, "You have returned so quickly. We have not eaten even one morsel in your absence. Please come here and take your meal without distraction." The words swagatam te ramhasa indicate the coward boys were congratulating Lord Krishna for having brought the cows back so quickly from the forest. Now, Lord Krishna's beloved friends urged him to sit down properly and eat to his full satisfaction. According to Srila Prabhupada's Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the coward boyfriends quite jubilantly were eager to eat with their dear friend Krishna. Tato hasan rishikesho vyavahritya saharvakai darsyams charma jagaram nyavartata vanadrajam. Then Lord Rishikesha, smiling, finished his lunch in the company of his coward friends. While they were returning to the forest to their homes in Braj, Lord Krishna showed the coward boys the skin of the dead serpent Aghasura. Barha prasuna vanadhatu vichitri tanga prodhama venu dala shringara potsa vadya vatsangrina nanuga gita pavitra kirtir gopi driguts utsavadrishi pravivesha goshtam. Lord Krishna's transcendental body was decorated with peacock feathers and flowers and painted with forest minerals, and his bamboo flute loudly and festively resounded as he called out to his calves by name. His coward boyfriends purified the whole world by chanting his glories. Thus Lord Krishna entered the cow pasture of his father Nanda Maharaj, and the sight of his beauty at once produced great festival for the eyes of all coward women. According to Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the gopis mentioned here are the elder coward ladies such as Mother Yashoda who love Krishna with parental affection. Krishna's coward boyfriends were also proud of Krishna's wonderful activities. While entering the village, they all sang his glories. Adyanena mahavyalo yashodananda sununa hatovita vayam chasmad iti bala vraje jagu. As the coward boys reached the village of Vraja, they sang today. Krishna saved us by killing a great serpent. Some of the boys described Krishna as the son of Yashoda, and others as the son of Nanda Maharaj. Actually, Lord Krishna had killed the demon Aghasura 1 year earlier, but the boys, bewildered by the mystic potency of Brahma for 1 year, did not notice the time passing, and thus thought that on that very day Lord Krishna had killed the demon Aghasura and was now returning home with them. Shri Rajo Vacha Brahman Parodbhave Krishne Iyan Prema Katham Bhavet Yobhuta Purvas Tokeshu Swadbhaveshvapi Katyatam. King Parikshit said of Brahmana, how could the coward women have developed for Krishna someone else's son? Such unprecedented pure love. Love they never felt even for their own children. Please explain this. Sri Shukha Vacha Sarveshamapi Bhutanam Nripasvatmaiva Vallabha Itare Patyar Vittadyas Tadvallabhatyaiva hi. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, O king, for every created being, the dearmost thing is certainly his own self. The dearness of everything else, children, wealth, and so on, is only to the dearness of the self. Sometimes modern thinkers become puzzled when they study the psychology of moral behavior. Although every living entity is inclined towards self-preservation, as stated here, sometimes a person voluntarily sacrifices his own apparent interests through philanthropical or patriotic activities, such as giving his money for the benefit of others or giving his life for the national interest. Such so-called selfless behavior appears to contradict the principle of material self-centeredness and self-preservation. As explained in this verse, however, a living entity serves the society, nation, family, and so on, because these objects of affection represent the expanded conception of false ego. A patriot sees himself as a great servitor of great nation, and thus he sacrifices his life to gratify his sense of egotism. Similarly, it is common knowledge that a man feels great pleasure by thinking that he's sacrificing everything to please his dear wife and children. Man derives great egotistic pleasure by seeing himself as a selfless well-wisher of his so-called family and community. Thus, to gratify his proud sense of false ego, a man is prepared even to lay down his life. This apparently contradictory behavior is yet another demonstration of bewilderment of material life, which has neither rhyme or reason, being a manifestation of gross ignorance of the non-material soul. Tad Rajendra yatha sneha swasva katmani dehinam natatha mamata lambi putra vitta grihadishu. For this reason, O best of kings, the embodied soul is self-centered. He is more attached to his own body and self than to his so-called possessions like children, wealth, and home. It is now common practice all over the world for a mother to kill her own child within the womb if the birth of the child represents any inconvenience for her. Similarly, grown children eagerly place their elderly parents in lonely institutions rather than be inconvenienced by their presence at home. These and innumerable other examples prove that people in general are more attached to their own body and self, which represent I-ness, than to their family and their other possessions, which present minus. Although conditioned souls are very proud of their so-called love for society, family, and so forth, in reality every conditioned soul is acting on the platform of gross and subtle selfishness. Dehatma vadinam pumsam apir rajanya sattama yata deha priyatmanas tathana yanu ye chantam. Indeed, for persons who think the body is the self, O best of kings, Those things whose importance lies only in their relationship to the body are never as dear to the body itself. Dehopi mamata bhakchit bhakchit tarhya so natmavat priya yajshirya yatyapi dehesmin jivitasa paliyasi. If a person comes to the stage of considering the body mine instead of me, he will certainly not consider the body as dear as his own self. After all, even as the body is growing old and useless, one's desire to continue living remains strong. The word mamatabhak is very significant here. An ordinary foolish person thinks, I am this body. More discriminating, intelligent person thinks, this is my body. In the literature and folklore of ordinary people, we find the common theme of an old, decrepit person dreaming of obtaining a new, young body. Thus, even ordinary persons pick up the notion of self-realization instinctively, understanding that it is possible for the soul to exist in many different bodies. As the body of an intelligent person becomes old and useless, he strongly desires to live, even where he knows that the body cannot live much longer. This indicates that he is gradually becoming aware that his self is more important than his body. Thus, simply, the desire for life can indirectly bring one to the preliminary understanding of self-realization. And in this case as well, one's basic attachment is to one's own self, and not to that which supposedly belongs to oneself. It may be pointed out that the entire discussion between King Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami regarding this dearness of one's own self is ultimately meant for broaching the subject of why the cows and cowherd ladies of Vrindavan consider Krishna more dear than their own selves, and certainly more dear than their own offspring. The discussion proceeds as follows. Tasmat priyatmata swatma sarvesham api dehinam tad artham swasakalam jagat etacharacharam. Therefore, it is his own self that is most dear to every embodied living entity, and it is simply for the satisfaction of the self that the whole material creation, moving and non-moving entities exist. The word characharam indicates the moving living entities such as animals and non-moving living entities such as trees, or the word may also refer to the moving possessions such as one's family and pets, and non-moving possessions such as one's house and household paraphernalia. Krishna menam avehitvam atmanam akhilatmanam jagad dhitya supyatra dehi va bhati maya. You should know Krishna to be the original soul of all living entities for the benefit of the whole universe. He has, out of his causeless mercy, appeared as an ordinary human being. He has done this by the strength of his internal potency. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 20, text 162, Srila Prabhupada comments on this verse as follows. Parikshit Maharaj asked Shukadeva Goswami why Krishna was so beloved by the residents of Vrindavan, who loved him even more than their own offspring or life itself. At that time, Shukadeva Goswami replied that everyone's Atma or soul is very dear, very, very dear, especially to all living entities who have accepted material bodies. But the Atma, the spirit soul, is part and parcel of Krishna. For this reason, Krishna is very dear to every living entity. Everyone's body is very dear to oneself, and one wants to protect the body by all means because within the body, the soul is living. Due to the intimate relationship between the soul and the body is important and dear to everyone. Similarly, the soul, being part and parcel of Krishna, Supreme Lord, is very dear to all living entities. Unfortunately, the soul forgets his constitutional position and thinks he is only the body, dehatma, buddhi. Thus, the soul is subjected to the rules and regulations of material nature. When a living entity, by his intelligence, reawakens his attraction for Krishna, he can understand that he is not the body, but the part and parcel of Krishna. Thus, filled with knowledge, he no longer labors under attachment to the body and everything related to the body. Janasya moha yaham mameti. Material existence where one thinks I am the body, and this belongs to me is also illusory. One must redirect the attraction to Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam 127 indicates Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yogena Yoga Prayojita Janayatya Suvairagyam Jnanam Cha Yada Ahitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Vastuto janata matra krishnam asthasnu charishnu cha bhagavadrupam akhilam nanyad vastvahi vastiva kinchana. Those in this world who understand Lord Krishna as he is all things, whether stationary and moving, as manifest forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such enlightened persons recognize no reality apart from the Supreme Lord Krishna. Everything exists within the Lord, and Lord Krishna exists within everything. Still, the order of progression is always from the energetic to the expanded energy. Lord Krishna is the original identity from whom other identities emanate. He is the supreme energetic from whom all categories and dimensions of energy become manifest. Thus our personal bodies, self, family, friends, nation, planet, universe, and so on are all manifestations of the Supreme Lord who expands himself through his personal potencies. Lord Krishna is certainly the supreme object of our love and attraction, and other objects such as body, family, and home should be secondary objects of our affection. Moreover, a close analytic study of actual situation will reveal that even the secondary object of love are also manifestations of Lord Krishna. The conclusion is that Lord Krishna is our only friend and object of love. In his Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada comments on this verse as follows. Without being an expansion of Krishna, nothing can be attractive. Whatever is attractive within the cosmic manifestation is due to Krishna. Krishna is therefore the reservoir of all pleasure. The active principle of everything is Krishna, and highly elevated transcendentalists see everything in connection with him. The Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated that a Mahabhagavat, a highly advanced devotee, sees Krishna as the active principle in all movable and immovable living entities. Therefore, he sees everything within the cosmic manifestation in relation to Krishna. Sarvesham api vastunam bhavarto bhavati stita tasyapi bhagavan Krishna kim atad vastu rupyatam. The original unmanifest form of the material nature is the source of all material things, and the source of even the subtle material nature is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. What then could one ascertain to be separate from him? Samashritaye padapallavam plavam mahat padam punya yasho murare bhavam bhudir vatsa padam param padam yadvipadam natesham. For those who have accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation, and is famous as Murari, the enemy of the Mura demon, the ocean of material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoofprint. Their goal is Parampadam, Vaikuntha, the place where there are no material miseries, not the place where there is danger at every step. This translation is taken from Srila Prabhupada's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2, text 51. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the verse summarizes the knowledge presented in this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Krishna's lotus feet are described as pallava, flower buds, because they are most tender and of pinkish hue. According to Srila Sanatana Goswami, the word pallava also indicates that Lord Krishna's lotus feet are just like desire trees, which can fulfill all the desires of the Lord's pure devotees. Even exalted devotees like Sri Narada, who are themselves great shelter for the conditioned souls in the universe, personally take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna. Thus, it is natural that when Lord Krishna manifests himself as all the young boys and calves of Vrindavan, their parents were more attracted to them than previously. Lord Krishna is a reservoir of all pleasure, and being all attractive, the ultimate object of everyone's love. Etatte sarvam akyatam yad prishtoham iha tvaya tad kaumare hari kritam paugande parikirtitam. Since you inquired from me, I have fully described to you those activities of Lord Hari that were performed in his 5th year but not celebrated until his 6th. Etad suhridbhisharita murare aghadhanam shadvala jemanam cha vyaktetarad ajorvyabhishtamam shrinman grinanneti naro kilarthan. Any person who hears the chants these pastimes of Lord Murari performed with his coward friends, the killing of Aghasur, the taking of lunch on the forest grass, the Lord's manifestation of transcendental forms, and the wonderful prayers offered by Lord Brahma, is sure to achieve all his spiritual desires. Jai. According to Srila Sanatana Goswami, even one who is only inclined to hear and chant the pastimes of Krishna will achieve spiritual perfection. Many devotees seriously engaged in propagating Krishna consciousness are often so busy that they cannot chant and hear the pastimes of the Lord to their full satisfaction. However, simply by their intense desire to always chant and hear about Lord Krishna, they will achieve spiritual perfection. Of course, as far as possible, one should actually vibrate these transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Evam vihara kaumaram jahatur raje Nilayanai Setubandar Markatot Plavanadibihi. In this way, the boys spent their childhood in the land of Vrindavan, playing hide and go seek, building play bridges, jumping about like monkeys, engaging in many other such games. According to Srila Sanatana Goswami, the word Nilayane refers to games such as hide and go seek, cops and robbers. Sometimes the boys would jump around just like monkeys in Lord Ramchandra's army, and then enact the building of the bridge of Sri Lanka by constructing play bridges in lakes or ponds. Sometimes the boys would imitate pastimes of churning the milk ocean, and sometimes they would catch with balls. We can find full pleasure in the spiritual world with the simple condition that everything be performed in pure love of Godhead, Krishna consciousness. Thus end the purports of the humble servant of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the 10th canto, 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Brahma's Prayers to Lord Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Just gonna wait till 108. Krishna, Krishna.